Recently, I was a guest on the Joy Curator podcast with Kimberly Evans. I instantly felt connected to this vibrant woman. She too has faced hardships that no mother should face. Her spark and enthusiasm for life is contagious, and I knew she had to be a guest on Rising Strong. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. What a beautiful intro. I appreciate your kind words.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your life, your journey, and why you love to talk about joy?
Well, I always preface this by saying Joy is my middle name for real. So maybe it's ingrained in me a little bit that way just because it has been my name since birth. But I have just naturally, my personality is optimistic, glass half full. There's always a way. Let's figure this out. Hopeful. That is just how I have been. And I don't know why some people get this kind of optimism and why some people really have to work really hard to not kind of naturally lean into a more, I don't want to say pessimistic, but more kind of glass half empty approach where life just feels maybe harder in certain situations. But yeah, for me, I just feel like I am a natural born optimistic person, and I by no means does that mean that I am happy all of the time. I just want to preface that. I think um there are certain groups and people and things that you see sometimes, whether we're on social media or different places, where there's lots of talk of toxic positivity, and that is not me. I am, you know, all my feelings when you know me. They are all out there for the world to see, hard on my sleeve, whether I'm frustrated or upset or happy or sad. You will know all of those things. It will not be a secret. So I feel like that's just how I live my life. I have always been a very just open and vulnerable person, but I think I have been fortunate enough to be surrounded by people in my life who allow me to be me. And it has taken, we're on the 42nd trip around the sun here. So it has taken a while to get to a place where I can feel really confident in just letting myself show up and be me. And whether that be joyful, to me, I feel like experiencing joy, for me, it feels like a lifestyle. It's not about feeling happy all of the time. It's about feeling and experiencing joy even when things feel hard, and even when grief strikes, and even when I call certain things that have happened in my life lightning bolt moments, even when those things happen, to feel joy simultaneously. I don't think that it has to live in its own silo where you have to feel happy to experience joy. And that's where I kind of feel like I have the difference in there for myself as to what I believe joy is.
I'm curious, what was your family like your family life like growing up? I had a very, very positive father. I describe him as not glass half full, but glass overflowing all the time.
Ah,
And I am like you. I feel like it's just kind of ingrained in me to find the happier side of life. Would you
mhm.
describe your experience growing up the same or different?
Yeah, like I would say it definitely was positive. Positive home environment. We're happy, life's good. We didn't have a luxury, lavish lifestyle. It was a very simple upbringing, but we always had what we needed, and everyone was like, felt fairly content with where things are at. I think one of the things that I noticed growing up that has been something that I continue to work on as an adult is I think around me often there was things being pretended like they were okay even when they weren't. So, and maybe your dad felt that way too, as like an overly optimistic person, like I don't know the answer to that. That isn't something that I know, but I feel like I've had to unlearn a little bit how to not pretend that everything is okay when it's not. And that doesn't mean that those feelings are bad. I've had to come to terms with, I grew up in a very reactive home. So we were happy and good and reactive in that way. And when things were hard or frustrating or anger, also reacting in that way, where yelling was very appropriate, raising your voice was very appropriate. All of those things I thought were normal to the reaction of that particular emotion. I did not know that you could be angry and not yell. So I had to really come to terms with what was the emotion versus what was the reaction to the emotion, and remind myself that being angry is not wrong. Yelling at somebody when I feel angry is wrong. So it's taken me a while to really kind of dig into all of those things and learn to be a person. And my kids would even say this to me right now. I am not a person that yells anymore. That used to be my ammo. They can remember growing up, and for that, I will forever wish I could undo. But we've had a lot of heartfelt conversations about those types of things. And it doesn't mean that I never overreact and I never make a mistake and that's not at all what I'm saying. But I've gotten to a place in my life where I don't have to get that to a point where I'm yelling and raising my voice about something that makes me upset. I can still have a reaction to it and I can still feel the feelings, but knowing when I need to remove myself from a space, knowing when I need time by myself, knowing when I need a minute to take some deep breaths, and learning how to remove myself before I get to that 11 where I'm seeing red and can't make proper decisions at that point. So it's been like an interesting time. I feel like I've always been somebody who has just been really fascinated with humans and their stories. I feel like even being younger, like I just feel like I've always had this very, like I'm always just analyzing things in a room. I'll be in a room with people and be like, oh, I wonder why they're doing that, or I wonder why, they're doing that sort of thing. And so as I've gotten older and understood some of the emotions and feelings and understood myself better, and worked really hard as a parent to really understand my children, so that I can relate with them and communicate with them in a way that works for them. That has been huge in how that's really shaped the work that I do in my business as well, because I feel like all of those things go very hand in hand. And I think a lot of the time we're really always trying to separate our personal and our professional lives, and mine are fully intermingled and intertwined and webbed, and there is really no beginning and end to them. And not that I don't have any balance or alignment in that, but they just all feed off of each other. And things that happen personally definitely affect me professionally, and things that happen professionally definitely affect things at home. So I think we have to just be mindful that we are one human, we are one person, no matter whether we are in a personal or a professional setting, and being able to be content in that and aligned in that takes so much less work than trying to be two different people or something that we're not.
Oh boy, so true. And I like what you said, that our emotions never exist in silos. And it took me a long time to learn this. In fact, I think I came across some material about 6 months ago that never do we experience one emotion at the same time. Just like our brains are thinking, I don't know what the magic number is, 72,000 thoughts, in the course of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Each one of those thoughts are directly linked to an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So, given a 5-minute time span, we're experiencing all these different emotions at the same time within the same time frame. And I think it's really important to pick out that we can be, or to verbalize that we can be angry and happy at the same time. We can be, frustrated, disappointed, angry, and sad at the same time. And it's this big thing. Let's circle back to joy. Do you think it's a choice?
Yes, I do think it is a choice. I feel like if I'm going to define joy with another word that is used very regularly, that maybe some people may resonate with more, I feel like joy and gratitude to me almost go hand in hand. So I feel like it's a choice, and not only a choice, but a practice, which is a choice. So I do feel like even for someone like me who does naturally lean towards the glass half full, it does not change the fact that I am a human being who has all kinds of things coming at me any given day, all of the multitudes of thoughts, like you just mentioned. All of us have that. And I think all of us have the choice. And to me, that is bar none, probably the most powerful thought, or the idea that that is possible, that we all have a choice, to me is just thinking like we get to choose how we spend our time. We get to choose with whom we spend our time and where we spend our time and how. And I think that the more we are in alignment, I very much feel, and time management is often not a word that maybe people associate with joy, but for me, it is. Where we spend our time directly is saying to ourselves and to others around us who are seeing where we're spending our time, this is what's important to me. So most of the time, I feel like if I'm not feeling aligned, something's not feeling good inside, my gut is like, oh, like something's just not feeling right, or I'm not feeling that kind of joy, something feels off. I can normally look back and think, how, even just today, how have I been spending my time? With whom have I been spending my time? And is it in alignment with what I know is my values as a human? Well, from what I have said are important to me, which there's no wrong answer to what our values are. But that's that piece where I feel like so many of us get those wires crossed where we think we know what our values are. Maybe we've even done work on this. Maybe we've taken a course on this. Maybe we've talked with a friend or a significant other about, what your values are, what's important to you. That seems to be more common talking points these days. But where we actually end up spending our time isn't matching with what we're saying is important to us. And that's where that misalignment comes in. So for me, if I'm not feeling sort of that joyful feeling and it feels off, and I also will notice like things happening where work I'm doing is feeling hard. Work that normally doesn't feel hard feels like it's taking more energy, or I'm feeling more tired and fatigued, or it feels like thing after thing after thing is happening that just doesn't feel good. Like you get an email that you're not loving, you get a text message you're not loving, your child will sass you, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like whatever the case may be, the things are going on and you're noticing the things that aren't feeling good more though than the things that you're grateful for or that are bringing you joy. That's when I notice that misalignment. And so I feel like the remedy for this at certain points is to slow down. For me, that's what I have to do, is the slow down, because we cannot be going a million miles an hour and have thought processes and awareness of our emotions if we're just like thing to thing to thing to thing. And I know for myself, even if I'm moving day to day, I know what sort of practical things need to happen in my day in order for me to feel really aligned. I need to wake up and do a meditation. I need to get a workout in. I need to eat a healthy breakfast and lunch and a dinner. And also just remember to eat. I need to drink enough water, take my vitamins, blah, blah, blah. All of these things. There's like a million and one things that just naturally occur sometimes in a day that I know I'm setting myself up for my version of success. And if even one of those things sometimes doesn't happen, I haven't drank enough water, I will notice little ripple effects of certain things starting to not feel. And it sounds daunting when you're first kind of learning these things about yourself, because you're like, oh my word, there's so many things that I need to be doing on any given day just to feel baseline, let alone actually feel joy. But habits and where we spend our time, for me, in my experience, has been where drastic change happens. And it starts with just tiny little pieces at a time. And there you see the alignment in how where you're spending your time and what you're choosing to do directly correlates with what you're saying your values are. And you just feel like you're able to show up in the world as the version of yourself that feels the most like you.
I just want to mirror what you said, just kind of a big aha moment that I had probably this summer. For the last year, year and a half, I've hit burnout at
Mm.
least twice, like fall on the pavement face
Oh,
first, sprawling out
yes.
burnout. And, as a logical human being like you, I knew that something was out of alignment. But what did I do? Took a 2-week break and jumped right into the exact same things I was doing. Prior to losing Katie, I was a practicing wellness coach. So I know these things, I know the basics. And frankly, workouts, getting outside, these things are my natural antidepressants. I need them in my life. But what really happened this summer for me was not only sitting down and taking a hard look at my schedule, which was probably more than two humans should really try and do. And for the first time in my life, figuring out what my values were. I thought I knew them. I
Yeah.
was close. I was close, but I was missing the mark. And when I looked at what I was doing versus my values, there were some definite misalignments. And
Mhm.
then I want to also speak to the timepiece that you said, because what became screamingly obvious when I did this little thing, which I have to say took me about a month to do, but was creating time. Part of my value, I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert.
Mhm.
Like I recharge my batteries when I've got downtime, quiet time. That means getting out in nature, maybe spending time with my nose in a book. And I
Mhm.
was not getting this time. I'm also somebody that gets my battery charged by learning new things.
Mm.
I'm kind of a crafty girl, and I like to learn how to create new things. So this actually just 2 weeks ago, I started a pottery class. Let me say I suck. Like, not good at this. No skills yet, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. Um, Having time to go for one coffee once a week with somebody different. I wasn't doing it, but just adding in, and I literally schedule these things into my day. And even my workouts are in my schedule. They're
Yes.
non-negotiables because I know that I will go sideways without them. So I love, love, love your points. Now, the next question I have for you, I'm actually going to read off of my paper because I think that the wording is so important. You emphasize creating a joy-filled life even when it looks different than expected. How can people redefine joy when they're living in circumstances they never anticipated?
Oh, that's a big question. Honestly, I'll start with sort of a high level point first, and then we can break it down a little bit to practical ways. But I just I have had to believe, based on circumstances that have happened in my life, that there is a bigger plan than what is going on in my own little mind. And that sometimes feels frustrating as well as comforting, because I would hate to think that the millions of thoughts going through my brain every day are the thing that are supposed to be figuring out what is happening in the big picture for my whole thing, because it's scattered at the best of times, even though I am an organized person and I like schedule and I like routine. There's a lot going on up there at any given time. I feel like, again, it is a choice. And for me, the moment where I recognized that the very first time in life, something came at me that was bigger than I felt that I had the capacity to handle for myself, which I am a very high capacity person. So even the idea that there is anything that could be thrown at me that I wouldn't be able to handle myself is humbling for me. I feel like it's my claim to fame to just be able to handle it all, just pour it on, add another thing to the pile. I got this. I never drop a ball, like all of that, which is just a bunch of garbage. But nonetheless, it's what my brain likes to believe sometimes is true. And it wasn't until my daughter was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis back in 2012 that my world felt like it turned upside down. My world felt like it stopped, except for the fact that I could see that everything else in the world hadn't stopped. And that felt even more sad and grief and frustrating to just see life going on when something so catastrophic had hit and that my world had to change so drastically in order to make room for something that I did not choose. And you and I have spoken about this, in that sense of just every single person, no matter what their story is, has things that have happened at some way, shape, or form in their life that, builds your story and that has, brings character to you. But we have to make a choice because we have also probably all seen people in our lives who have had things happen in their lives where they have made the choice to go down a different path, and it hasn't turned it into a learning experience. It hasn't turned it into something where they are seeing joy or where they really can get out of it. And there's a million and one reasons for that, and that's a whole nother episode. But I think for myself, I knew that Cassidy's diagnosis needed to be more than just a diagnosis. That didn't sit well with me. I needed it to mean something and that it had to have happened for a reason. And there was supposed to be something good coming out of it. I had no idea what that was 12 years ago. No idea. It was hard and I was sitting in it and I couldn't even open my mouth to say anything to anyone without crying for months. Couldn't talk about it. I started writing about it a little bit because so many people were asking questions and I wanted to give people updates, but I just could not talk about it without it just bringing me to tears, and therefore not being able to share the story properly. And so it really did take time. But I do remember, even in amidst that dark time, I remember just noticing things around me, noticing signs around me, noticing things that were happening and people speaking into my life that were A, making me feel not alone, and B, me being able to recognize that my hard thing might not look the same as somebody else's hard thing, but everybody is going through some type of hard things. And I could pinpoint the people that I was seeing. I was like, I don't want my hard thing to show up like that in my life. That's not going to work for me. And that's not the children that I want to raise. And that's not the resilience that I want to see resilience. That is what I feel is my job as a parent, to help my children see resilience. And fortunately, unfortunately, the only way we can experience resilience is by going through really hard things. Resilience does not come when life is tickety-boo. It can't, because we're just tickety-boo. And you're not noticing the things that have to build your character. You're just happily, and it's good to be in those spaces too. We don't always want to live in the hard things. It's nice to just be in that like happy place where things can just feel like they're rolling along and we're good. But a lot of us do experience hard things every single day, from little teeny tiny things, like I mentioned before, getting a text message you don't like, or someone sends you an email that you're like, oh, this isn't feeling good to me, or, whatever the case may be. They can be things that are that small to things that feel like catastrophic, overwhelming, I don't know if I'm ever going to recover kind of grief.
Mhm.
But regardless, the journey is very different no matter what those things look like. But regardless, the steps of that journey, whether they take a short time or a long time, that's not the point. There's no peace in that. It's just figuring out for yourself, like, what do you want your life to look like? And what is it going to mean? And I know we've talked about that in relation to your daughter and in relation to my daughter. What is their life going to look like? Legacy, day to day, what does that look like? And so I think we need to know those things about ourselves. We need to know, for you to know that working out is like your lifeblood, for you to know that reading a book recharges you, just those kinds of things. Like, they're not big deals. Like, they're kind of little things, except they're big things when they're not there, right? So I think we just need to know those things about ourselves, and we can't know that about ourselves until we try new things and do the pottery class and go on it for a period of time and decide we're either really terrible and we're like, okay, been there, done that, maybe this isn't my thing, or been there long enough that you're like, sweet, I just served a meal in my new bowl. So I think that's the piece for me is just, you got to just keep taking the next right step. And
Mhm.
there's no right way to do that.
No, I think sometimes it feels a little bit like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing
Yep.
what sticks. For example, like the pottery thing. I mean, I'm only 2 classes in, but I honestly don't know if this is my thing. But the whole point of it for me is carving out me time,
Hmm.
making an appointment somehow, some way on my schedule that is designated Lisa time. I
Yeah.
love being creative. I love learning new things. So it was something that checked the boxes. Next time it might be a sewing class. It might be pickleball. I don't know. But I just know that those are the little things, as you say, that are on the path to
Mm.
my well-being, and that I can't experience joy, even the moments or the little glimmers, as some people say, unless my path is being paved with these basic things.
Yeah.
The same instance that might bring me joy in one moment may not in another if I haven't been taking care of myself to the point where I can actually feel that joy, if that makes any sense at all.
It totally does. And I think what you just said, that's exactly it. I almost feel like there's layers to joy. There's
Yeah.
layers of it. Like, as humans, we need our basic needs met. We need our basic needs met. We need to eat. We need to drink water. We need to sleep. Those things have to happen in order for us to survive as humans. So if we're just looking at it super basic on this side, but then once those basic needs are met and we're functioning as a human and we like can just be, that's when we get to add that next layer in of, okay, I'm fine. I'm not in survival mode right now. I have my basic needs that are met, and that's technically kind of all that we need. But then we're going to add in these pieces. And I think as we get older, like, all of us probably knew from when we were younger, thinking back to being children, oh, what was fun? What did we enjoy? Like, what felt good? Like, I sometimes will have flashbacks, even of just this like whimsical feeling of like playing on a playground, where I just remember like you're not wearing a watch. You're not looking at the time, like you're letting the school bell kind of like dictate your life or whatever at that little stage of life, but who knows? Has recess been going on for 5 minutes or 20 minutes? I have no idea, because we're just in the zone, losing track of time and just having so much fun. And I think that's where, especially, I would say probably someone like us, if I put us in the same category, who have brains that are going regularly with stuff that's like always happening, we have to lose ourselves in something. And whether it's a book or a class or a meditation or having a coffee with a friend or just literally being alone and staring at the ceiling, like, there's no wrong answer to this, but we have to know what actually turns that brain of ours into a place of just being and just letting ourselves be and not thinking that we have to have everything figured out.
Absolutely. Now, I think you and we're so similar at it. It's actually a little bit frightening, but w- you and I have clearly chosen joy when we could have chosen misery, and probably nobody would judge us for it. We've
Right.
both been delivered, some unfair things in our lives. We've chosen joy. But what would you say to those people who may feel that they don't deserve joy? I know, sadly, a number of grieving moms who say, why, how could I possibly be happy? I have a child who's died. Or
Yeah.
maybe somebody's gone through something and they feel they don't deserve joy for whatever reason. What would you say to those people?
Oh, I feel like for myself, I have had to do a lot of work for myself, my own being, let alone the work that I've done processing my child's diagnosis and like those actual pieces about it, but just working on myself. And all of those things have led to me doing more work on myself because they were hard and I needed to like understand sort of more things about me and emotions and feelings and all of these things in order to really be able to process what was going on around me. But I think I would put it into the perspective, and I have not lost a child. So I say this with the most coming from the most kindest, generous place because I never want to try to put myself into a situation and think I know something about something that I have not experienced in my life. What I have experienced is grief. That I have experienced. And so for me, I was working through for many years this idea that I was probably going to outlive my child. So it was like this like ongoing, almost like waiting for that to happen type of feeling that I was trying to not feel. I didn't want to feel that way, but that was where my grief kept bringing me to, is this idea of almost anticipating that I was going to have to be somebody who had to learn how to live without their child in a long-term plan. Like, okay, maybe she might live till she's 30. Okay. She was 4 at the time. So in my mind, I was like, that's not okay with me. I don't want that, but there's still time. So I was like, trying to like live in that space. And I had to work through the space with her being alive that I was going to be okay even if she wasn't. So I think we all come at this from a different place. And again, there is no wrong way to do this, but I do believe that if anybody's loved ones could speak to them audibly that we could hear from once they have passed on, I really don't believe that there would be one single person that would say, I want you to sit in this misery. I do not believe that that is even possible because that isn't the feelings that we're even able to have once we've crossed over. We're just in this space, right? And I think it's the anticipation of what we don't know that often puts us into that anxious feeling now because we don't know what that is like and we can't ever know what that's going to be like. But I just would want to believe that whatever the personality was of the person whom we have lost, and for me, my daughter was here and I was thinking she is a happy, bubbly girl who has a whole life ahead of her, and we've never known what that was going to look like. Nobody knows what that's going to look like. You know that. We do not know what that looks like. And so I feel like we have to just make that choice of, if they were standing beside us right now, would that be something that would be bringing them joy to see us in the current state that we are in? And I know we've talked about this as moms, that whole put on your mask first before assisting others was not how we were taught years back. Now it's becoming more of the frontline conversation in this new day, and I'm so glad that it is. But I have had to continue to unlearn certain things in order to be open to the idea that I cannot take care of anybody else around me if I am not okay. So really, it's the continuing of modeling. And I would like to think that if my child was looking down on me from heaven, that I would want to continue to live my life in a way that would make them be so freaking proud of of what I was still doing because they're still a part of me. And I say this without having had to have had that experience yet, so I'm not trying to put any words into anybody's situation, but I do that now while she's here. And I would like to think that I would be doing the same thing if she wasn't, because that to me would be the only thing that would, I think, bring me peace and joy, is to know that she'd be looking at me and be like, wow, way to go, mom. That pottery looks really ugly, but I'm really proud of you for doing the class.
Well, it's so interesting that you would say that, because that really has been almost from day one the thoughts that go through my head. What is Katie thinking when she watches me from the other side? I do want her to say, like, that's my mom.
Yeah.
And I also feel like I am Katie's living legacy. You
Yes.
know, I want to shine my light as best I can in a way that honors her, so that when people look at me, they say, ah, that's Katie's mom, you
Yes.
know, and, she's gone through this terrible, terrible thing, but man, look at her and look at what she's doing. And it's not that I'm wanting to bring attention to myself. I just don't want Katie's life
Yes.
to have been without meaning. And if I can, give her some kind of legacy, that is my goal. And I think when you talk to grieving mothers, they may not be there yet. It takes a
Yeah.
while,
Yeah.
but that ultimately that is the goal. Do you think that we have to give ourselves permission to find joy, to be joyous, to be happy?
I think most women think they need permission. Um,
Mm.
in everything in life, to be quite honest. I think that's a constant unlearning. But I don't believe we do need permission. I believe that I know for myself, when I see somebody who is doing something that they love, they are confident about who they are, they don't apologize for being too much, or for, the things that don't require an apology that we often apologize for, versus things that do require an apology that we need to be mindful of. um, I am just so attracted to somebody like that. It makes me feel so inspired to see somebody just, I don't know, like sometimes, even if you're at a concert sometimes, or you're somewhere and you see somebody just dancing like no one's watching. Like, I look at that and I'm like, good for you. There's moments where I can be like that, and then moments where I'm like, not in a million years. So I just feel like being able to recognize for yourself, and sometimes it's easier to do this when you see it in others. Maybe you see something in your child, maybe you see something in your partner, maybe you see something in a friend or a stranger. I think for us to be able to recognize what we notice about somebody else that we're like, wow, that's really cool, sometimes can be a mirrored reflection of what we wish we could be more like, and are maybe struggling to figure that out about ourselves. So just to be mindful of, like, what are you picking up on? What are you noticing around you that you're like, oh, that's really cool. They look like they're having so much fun. Or sometimes even if I'm just driving and you see both sides of the coin, but you'll see like people sitting in the front seat of the vehicle, either laughing their heads off or something while they're driving to places, or you see people like in the midst of it and you're like, oh, they had a morning. It's not funny, but we've all been there. To just see those kinds of reactions where I'm like, oh, I wonder what they're laughing about. Like, I wonder what's so funny that they're like doubling over, crying, laughing while they're driving somewhere. Like, that to me brings me so much joy, that I want to be more like that when I'm, you know, doing things with others, or just even on my own.
That's a perfect segue into my next question, because, and I know we've kind of sprinkled this a little bit through our conversation about how to find joy. We've talked about permission. We've talked about, our values and all this. But if someone is listening to us and the light bulb is going off, that they are ready to find more joy, create more joy, however you want to say it, what are some baby steps, some beginner steps for people to start finding more joy?
Mm-hmm. Reminding ourselves that we just have to start somewhere. I think a lot of us feel like joy is only going to come. I used to think that there was going to be somehow this like finish line somewhere. All of a sudden, I was going to just hit some fictitious finish line where nothing bad was going to happen. I was going to feel really great all of the time. Life was just going to be easy and good. I have no idea where this crazy thought came from, but that's really what I used to think, that I was just working towards this somehow this goal of like life all of a sudden being figured out. And I don't know what bubble burst or like what all of a sudden happened for me to realize that that was not the case. And that I started living more by taking the next right step. And I think if we can just think of the tiniest, smallest little ways, I think sometimes joy, when we're making this as a choice for anything, there's little things that are going on in our brain. I don't know if anybody's watched the movies like Inside Out and Inside Out 2. I love the visual that they have created in those movies for how to recognize your feelings and what the inner workings of our brains maybe could look like if we put pictures to them, you know? But just thinking like we sometimes there's just a little glitch somewhere in something going on in our brain that just is like not allowing us to sort of experience something, or we get in the day-to-day monotony of life. We're only driving kids to activities, and then we're making dinner, and then we're doing whatever in the evening, and then getting to bed and waking up in the morning, and it's just sort of this like robotic thing that we're really not loving, but we don't know what to do about it. How do we get out of that zone? And so for me, it's just doing one little thing that might be different. So, for example, driving a different route to work than you normally would. Just take a different route completely. Will it add time? Maybe, but just let it. Or if you'd like to pick up a coffee on your way to work, try a new place. Drive a different path, stop at a different place, and walk inside to a different place to just feel what that feels like. For me, that makes me feel like I'm on a holiday. So when I'm on vacation or I'm somewhere and I'm experiencing a new place or I'm trying a new place, everything feels different and good. And I think that's why a lot of us are like craving our next vacation or our next getaway or even just time off from something, because we're actually really just craving a reset. And I think we can do that day to day in really tiny ways that don't have to cost a lot of money in order for our brain to be like, huh, that felt kind of nice. I liked seeing this new street and buildings, and I don't know, as you're driving to work or as you're going to pick up a coffee, or, oh, that coffee tasted really good, different than what I'm used to. I really liked it. Or maybe you won't really like it. And that's also information. So letting each of it, doesn't matter what the experience is, but just doing little things that just kind of get yourself out of that everything needs to be the same every single day. It's like we all know the definition of trying to keep doing the same thing and getting a different result.
Yep, that's called insanity.
It is. And
Yeah.
most of us are trying to avoid that being our
Right?
life's fate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know myself, even walks are something that I find very helpful in my just maintaining my mental health. And this summer, when I hit rock bottom and I was really burnt out and just kind of flailing, I wasn't sure, like, how do I find this joy thing, this elusive joy? And I started doing exactly what you said. And it was little things. It was like I'd either walk my usual walking path backwards, or I would kind of go the same loop, but I would try and go through all the parks on my way, or new coffee shops, as you said, new shops, in my own community that I should have ventured into before, but never did. And I think, just to add on to that, I think for years, I used to think, if I get this, if I get this job, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
If I could just lose those last 10 pounds, I'll be happy. If this, then that, and I'll be happy. And, maybe it's my ripe old age, I don't know, but you get to this point and you realize that happiness, again, joy, call it what you will, it's choice. And I can find happiness in my own day-to-day life. I can be happy when I'm out for that dang walk, right? I can be happy that I took a moment and I could lose myself in a book. I could be, take your thing, pick the thing, but choose the things that are going to make you happy every day so that it's not a goal or a finish line that, man, we might never get to, right? Because
That's that's exactly it. And I think for all of us who have this idea of like even what success looks like, whether personally or professionally, this idea that all of a sudden we're just going to feel we're going to hit this number in our business. We're going to do this. And all of a sudden, somehow without anything else changing, we're just going to feel great. Like when you say it out loud, you're like, of course not. This is the same reason why most people that win the lottery are miserable.
mm,
Like it's not about that. It's about the steps to take along the way to get there. And I think even just your example of taking pottery, even it not going as perfectly as you were maybe thinking it would, you even experiencing those feelings of maybe moments of frustration. Or even when it's something where you're trying to do something nice for yourself and doing whatever, where you're like, well, I shouldn't feel frustrated during this time because I'm having time to myself. That's part of the building of the resilience right there, is just letting yourself be in a moment where it's like, yeah, this is frustrating learning something new, but I also like learning something new. So I got to just feel all of these things along the way, and I'm going to be better for it. Whether I ever make something that actually looks like something that I thought it should or not, that's besides the point. And that right there is like the journey, right? We don't need that beautiful piece of pottery on the end of it in order to know that all of the steps that we were taking along the way, that was the joy. Those pieces are the joy. It's not the finish line that becomes the joy. And I think the more we start seeing that day to day, little tiny steps of things, that's where big awakenings start happening in our minds, to start seeing it in a more tangible way everywhere we go.
and to circle back to something you said earlier, gratitude.
Mm.
I think we've all seen this meme on social media or somewhere before, but instead of complaining about the dishes we've got to do, let's be grateful that we live in a home and we have the ability to cook meals on and serve on the dishes that need to be cleaned. Let's
Mm-hmm.
be grateful that we have laundry because, that means X, Y, and Z. And just taking these tiny moments in our lives to find gratitude. There was a fellow who wrote a book, and I actually had to read the title twice. He was a World War II concentration camp survivor.
Mm.
His book was entitled, I might get it wrong. His book was entitled The Happiest Man Alive. Now, he's since
Mm.
passed on. His name was Eddie Jaku, Jaku, for anybody who wants to look it up. And I mean, I think we all know the atrocities that happened in World War II concentration camps. This was not a fun place to be. But when this man was released and went on to continue his life, got married, have children, he wrote this book about being the happiest man alive. And I think to me, it really drove the point home that it's our perspective,
Mm-hmm.
our mindset, and my goodness, did this man have gratitude. So if people want to learn a little bit more about you, Kimberly, the work that you do, I know they're going to want to look you up. Where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, you can go to kimberlyjoyevans.com. I am on Instagram under my name, Kimberly Joy Evans, as well as my business is Joy Consulting on Instagram. And I would love to hear from anyone who maybe has like insights about this or has ideas or things about joy or maybe how it's not working. All of it. Send me a DM, reach out on my website. I would love to connect.
Thank you so much for being here. I feel like there's another episode here where you and I have got so much more to talk about, but I appreciate you so, so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
And to the listeners, stay well and be resilient, and we'll catch you next time.